Hi everyone. We're gonna get started if everyone's ready. Jump straight in. Hi everyone. My name is Paul Rogers, and this is Josh, my business partner. We're from a company called Vervaunt. Just to kind of introduce the company a little bit initially. Vervaunt was founded 6 years ago. Josh and I are best friends. Known each other since we were 16. Josh's background is purely kind of performance marketing and media, and my background is more as kind of a solution architect and kind of customer experience, so more kind of broader ecom. We have two offerings as a business that are quite independent. So Josh runs the performance side, I run the ecom consultancy side. My side is primarily focused on kind of re-platforming, independent auditing, kind of building of business cases, overall kind of D2C strategy, that kind of stuff. And then Josh runs the paid side, which is the traditional media channels plus affiliates and ad creative. Our average client is a premium fashion brand typically, or lifestyle brand. We're about 60% UK, which is where we're both based, and 20% US and 20% Europe and Asia, basically. We also run a conference as well, which takes place in a month, which I think some people in the room might be attending, and Brad's speaking at as well. And here are some of the brands we work with. So like I say, typically kind of more fashion, more kind of lifestyle brands. Average client is kind of 20 to 200 million online revenue. And just to set the scene a bit for this talk, so it's a bit random, just purely because Josh and I have got quite different backgrounds, and this is the first time we've ever done a talk together. So about 3 days ago, we kind of had two independent talks, and then over the last 24 hours, we've restructured the whole presentation. So apologies to Elevar for changing the deck so many times. So we've ended up with something that we think should be quite good. So I'm covering off the ecom side. Josh is talking about kind of brand and more of the marketing and customer acquisition side. We decided to do a survey as well, just to add a bit more context and kind of back up some of the points we're making. So we did the deck initially, then ran the survey as well, and it did back up most of the points. So just to give you a few kind of bullets to kind of set the scene. So nearly 80% of respondents have increased their budget significantly in around photography, and the biggest area of increased budget over the last 2 years was content production. Brand building was one of the top priorities, so top 3 out of a list of 7 or 8. But actually the top priority is entering new markets, which doesn't really back up our point, but it is interesting anyway. And then over 63% put rising cost of acquisition as their biggest concern. Second was balancing inventory, which I'll talk a little bit about. And third was privacy changes. Josh?
Great, yeah. So I'm going to give a quick overview. It's kind of like the US digital landscape from an advertising perspective. So US retailers are investing more ad spend than ever. That's within a ecosystem or landscape which is going through some of its most rapid evolution. So just to show this visually, so this is US digital ad spend, the bar graph. So over the last 3 years, digital ad spend in the US is growing at a compound annual growth rate of 8%. I found this quite interesting that US ad spend per capita is at its highest ever level, not accounting for inflation. And last year, ad spend online and offline was 62% higher than only 5 years ago. So we're in a very, very difficult competitive landscape when you're looking at kind of like ad buying in the US market. So where's the growth coming from? So search kind of like just has had consistent, stable growth. In 2024, Google have just announced their earnings call, where they've had 20% growth from ad revenues. Social's grown 9% 2023 versus 2021, but where the big area of growth is in the last 2 years, so this is comparing 2023 to 2021, TikTok has seen 3 times the growth in ad spend in the United States. It's now used regularly by 40% of US adults, so definitely a big area where we're seeing a change to media spend. Retail media ad spend is up 49%, obviously in growth through Amazon and Walmart. Your retail media is significantly more prominent in the US than it is in the UK, so we're expecting the UK to kind of like slowly catch up over time. And then video is seeing massive growth, so we're going to talk through kind of like a lot of video tactics and brand building throughout the presentation, but ad spend in the US on video was up 40% or 42% in 2023 versus 2021.
Right. So the e-com side of the business, which I run, is primarily focused on, I guess not primarily, but a big part of what we do is kind of owning roadmaps for brands. And we've probably got kind of 10 to 15 retained clients where we're responsible for building an initial roadmap and then delivering different items on that roadmap. And the biggest trend we've seen over the last 12 months by a country mile is first-party data strategy. And the biggest within that is moving towards account-based journeys. So a lot of the speakers at this conference have talked about kind of privacy issues and the deprecation of cookies and all of that kind of stuff. And as a result of that, as well as kind of overall data enrichment goals, lots of our clients are moving to encouraging customers to build an account, or even in places forcing the building of an account. So that they're better able to track the customer and they're in a better position to capture richer data. And I think the majority of people at this conference are Shopify focused. So we're platform agnostic, but probably 90% of what we do now is Shopify because they're so dominant. So I'm going to talk quite a lot around Shopify, but every now and then I'll talk about other platforms. So on the Shopify side, majority of that data is being pushed into a CRM or housed within Shopify. Whereas with some of our other clients that are on Salesforce or SAP or some of the composable platforms, it will be pushed into a CDP, which is a big trend we've seen outside of Shopify, I would say. So overall recommendations, so build out, and I'm going to go into examples. So this is just to kind of summarize, but build out your account proposition, base level membership. Building an account is not only a good foundation from like a tracking perspective, but it also allows for loyalty. Like the majority of loyalty vendors and approaches will require an account. Obviously, you might need to do a cost-benefit analysis before rolling out some of the service benefits, but the majority of our clients offer kind of free shipping, free returns, amongst other things, which will impact margin, but equally it kind of incentivize the customer to go through this process rather than just entering an email, for example. And then the other thing that I would say is, like, as you're kind of, some of your core journeys can be adapted to capture additional data, be that early on or kind of further down a first or a new customer journey. And I'll go through some examples of that, and then think about all the sources of data. So account setups is a really good place to ask certain questions. So like interest or, closest store, anything else along those lines. Post-purchase surveys is another great way to capture data. A lot of our clients will ask for things like gift versus self-purchase. One of our clients asks for age range, which is 25% of customers fill in. Post-return survey is another one. Review requests can also kind of ask more detailed questions. So just to start going through some examples. So Solomon, for the last couple of years, has been the example that I've used. So when you first come to the site, there'll be a little 1 next to the customer icon, which our clients have proved is very good for grabbing attention and generating a click. And then here they kind of talk about the benefits of their S Plus program, which is essentially just building an account as a membership program. And then they offer you things like free shipping, free returns, early access to events, sale preview, all of that kind of stuff. And they do it as soon as you land on the site, but also in checkout. And that's really nice example of someone that I would imagine is getting a really decent percentage of accounts. One of our clients, Jay Lindbergh, so we've just been working with these guys. They're one of the best Shopify examples, I would say. So they've introduced Clubhouse, which is very similar to Solomon. So they do 10% off your first order, free shipping and returns, and various other kind of benefits around pre-release, pre-sale, etc. So they've increased their account sign-up significantly since they introduced this, and I'll come on to some data in a bit. But it's really nicely positioned across the site. Again, it's just the account, it's not loyalty. And then the next stage, once you fill that out, they then ask for preferences, which like a decent amount of customers fill in. So this is my example. So I filled out gender, interest, and then below interest, you have sizing. And then the next phase of this is to surface the sizing information on site. So on PDP for recommended sizing, on PLP around filtering, that kind of stuff. But the main benefit here to them is that they've got like really rich customer data for a pretty simple journey. So a lot of mainstream brands and retailers have also introduced this, and Balenciaga is one of my favorite ones because you wouldn't necessarily expect this, but they're obviously prioritizing the data and tracking side. Nike have a member shop, so you have to build an account in order to access the product. On Running have done the same. It's really nicely positioned, lots of member-only product. Kith have recently done this as well as part of their loyalty program, and they do app exclusive as well. So another great approach for capturing data and kind of supporting that account piece. Another example, so earlier I talked about surfacing more questions in order to capture richer data. So Interior Define, so in the furniture industry, swatches are often like a primary route to conversion. So I think when the furniture brands that I've worked at, you're 20 times more likely to buy if you've gone through a swatch journey, and like up to 25% of customers will go through that swatch journey. So Interior Define have built out a set of questions. So once you've built your swatch basket, so you've added your free swatches that you want, which are free, they ask you 2 questions. One is about your design style and one is about your project. And this is such an easy way to get that data into your CRM or CDP and really enrich kind of everything you know about the customer. Solomon, so I think there's already been a couple of mentions of quizzes, and kind of you see a lot of like isolated quizzes, particularly from kind of beauty or cosmetic brands, which are great for capturing more data and pushing that into your CRM. Solomon have a PLP where they built in shoe finding kind of functionality, and it's just a very subtle set of options. And again, all of this will be pushed through to the CRM or CDP. But it's just a much cleaner way of capturing this data for more of a premium brand. And then 2 last bits. So another way of capturing first-party data. So a number of our clients are now doing extended warranty for product registration. So Bosch is not our client, but it's a good example from a big brand. And then this would be wholesale customers, retail customers, and online customers. And when you're kind of doing this and you're offering something like that, you're in a really good position to ask more detailed questions. And then Joseph is a client of ours, and they did this as well. And again, great way to capture more wholesale data. And then Josh.
Right, thanks, Paul. And then so when we designed this talk, we looked at kind of like what are the themes for 2024. And independently, one of my main themes for performance marketing was essentially the resurgence of brand. One of Paul's biggest themes on the e-com side was kind of like brand experience. And then from our survey as well, one of the biggest trends in terms of where investment going, it was into brand as well. So we definitely want to focus on that within the presentation. We would quite confidently say that brand strategy is going to be fundamental for all retailers to scale this year. If we look at Business of Fashion and McKinsey, ran a big survey this year. 72% of our exec respondents plan to spend more on brand marketing. So why is brand marketing spend increasing? So we all know that loyalty or brand loyalty is in a continuous decline. It's kind of like continued to decrease since COVID. I'd imagine most of the retailers and advertisers in the room now will be spending on ASC and PMAX, and those ad campaign types are very good at serving the right ad, the right person at the right time. So what you're doing is you're serving product-based ads to people who are ready to buy with little consideration around awareness, attracting new customers, and really building brand demand. So what we've seen is these tactics often have quite a low ceiling, so it's quite difficult to scale if you're only running via essentially like a machine learning algorithm where you're pushing direct response only. It's also much more cost effective to run engagement first campaigns. So it's 4 times cheaper to run an ad on Meta if you're running it through an engagement based campaign type than a conversion. And then also, so for the marketers in the room, you'll know the kind of like theme of performance branding. So there's now much more option to measure your brand activations now than there were historically. So measurement's a big part of this presentation we'll come on to. And then to link back to a prior point around kind of like ad spend being at its highest ever level, it's very difficult to cut through the noise. And brand marketing does give you that opportunity to kind of like really touch on consumers. So I just wanted to touch on one thing where brands need to kind of like deliver value beyond just an impression. So Brad mentioned earlier, within at least kind of like the display ecosystem, you're going to soon see kind of like eye tracking being part of kind of like what's reported back to advertisers. So my prediction for the future is that you're going to see CPMs move from a cost per 1,000 impressions to a cost per seconds of attention. There's a lot of studies out there which show that attention is up to 7 times more effective than estimating brand recall than just kind of like viewability or impressions. So there's going to be a big shift towards people trying to understand and capture attention as a metric versus just delivery in terms of impression CPMs. So we wanted to show you some examples as well. So Jacquemus so this is the example on the left. They're very regularly recognized as one of like the coolest content marketers out there. So they do a lot of CGI. I'm sure you've seen some of them kind of like shared on social media. They do a lot of experiential marketing, a lot of immersive marketing. What I love about these is they're now running 7-minute long ads on Facebook. And if you look at kind of like what has been the transition over the last 3 years on social, everyone's running 6 to 10-second ads. Whereas what we're seeing is the real big players are kind of like reinvesting in long form storytelling, really building the brand. So they've got a 7-minute ad, which is supported with 40-second iterations. North Face, so I love this example, the second one. So they've got a 30-second brand video they're running on social. The landing page is a 35-minute video on YouTube. So they're not even directing consumers to the PDP, to the PLP. They're literally taking you to a youtube.com brand video where they can kind of like really sell you the kind of like narrative of the brand. 2 clients we work with in the UK, so Doc Martens and Peter Millar. You can just see that kind of like they're focusing on the whole like campaign TV style content. We're definitely expecting more and more brands to kind of like push this style of content in addition to, you know, the continuous move towards UGC we've seen over the last couple of years.
Great. And then on the same theme, so when Josh and I were kind of messing around with the slides yesterday, we realized that we're essentially saying similar things, but basically our role with the clients we work with on a retained basis historically has been very heavily oriented towards new features and, you know, testing new functionality. Whereas right now, I would say those same clients are spending more hours on creative than on development. And actually they're investing significantly or investing more around kind of content and proposition and net new customer landing experiences than they are kind of, you know, testing different levels of bundling or product recs or whatever else. So this has been a massive shift over the last year, and a few things within this. So we've got more clients that are now hiring internally with creative roles than ever before. So one of our clients has just hired 2 full-time motion designers. Another one of our clients has just hired an art director, and they're probably not the type of brand you would expect to do that. We've also got clients that are now working with creative directors or creative agencies on a retainer in a similar basis to a development agency, which is quite a new trend. And they're completely different parties as well, which is another big trend we're seeing. So rather than working with one partner, you're splitting it out to have kind of best-in-class inputs, and you'd have a similar style of retainer. And then product and brand level storytelling is just getting bigger and bigger. And again, that's another area where a lot of our clients have invested in testing, and now they're just investing significant amounts of money in. And a few examples. So this one hasn't worked. I'm hoping that's not the Nike one. It is the Nike one. So the Nike example is my favorite. So what was previous to this, but it hasn't worked. And Nike has widely been regarded in like the e-com space as like an ultra usable bottom of funnel mobile first experience for the last kind of 3 or 4 years, widely used as an example by different usability agencies and everything else. And now they've started investing in a lot more storytelling. So the PDP that I had was one of the dunks, and they've got long form video content on the PDP. They've got loads of lifestyle content. They've got, I think, 3 paragraphs about the story of Dunk. And a number of the larger clients we've worked with that historically have been, you know, building kind of performance-oriented landing pages and now investing in this style of experience where they're using kind of, you know, they're putting high amounts of budget into lifestyle content. So On is the perfect example, and they've similarly moved from kind of bottom of funnel experience to more editorial style kind of storytelling. And they've been one of the kind of, I guess, best growth stories over the last couple of years. So this is Tracksmith, another example as well, just to show you the kind of journeys that we've seen, and a few of our clients have definitely gone down this route recently. And then Nudie Jeans is one of my favorite examples of this kind of stuff. So I would put them at like the top of the industry for content, but kind of brand level content. So this is their size guide, which is interactive, and you can compare different fits, and they've got like little videos around all the different sizes. And if this was a GIF, the guy rotates. And they've also got ridiculously strong traceability content as well, which is all interactive. And they've invested heavily in all the DPP stuff that's coming, and they they've got like a really engaging way of talking you through the whole supply chain of the product. So they're another really good example. And then Josh.
Cool. And then, so to follow on Paul's points there, one of the bigger trends in performance marketing, again, is based around content. So one of the bigger trends we're seeing is audience first and platform first content. So if a performance marketer is in the room, you'll know that kind of like there's been a big shift towards targeting your audience through your creative. So like 3 years ago, you would build an audience profile, you would target those specific interests in Meta. Now the premise is essentially you build content which talks to that audience. So as users engage with your content, Meta will find people more similar to that vein. So I guess the most basic example would be if you're trying to reach an ethical shopper, you would really start to serve ESG kind of like based content. So I've got a few examples here, which are quite cool. So discovery, that would kind of like include your UGC influencer content that would reach consumers who are looking to be inspired, looking to discover new products. I guess another big part of this presentation is you need to kind of like have creative diversification. So you need lots of building blocks of content which talk to different audiences. So another kind of like creative theme could be product features. So this would talk to people who really value a kind of like value proposition. So that they demand quality and design. The sort of content you need to serve them would be, behind the manufacturing. It would talk about all of the product details, all of the product features, and so on. You might also want to run lifestyle content. So this would be kind of like your photography, the lookbook content, the campaign content. And this would reach an audience who kind of like really respond to that aspirational based content. So what we've seen really recently, and I guess with the transition to ASC, is there's been a huge move away from audiences, and you essentially target and build your audiences through your creative. So we've got quite a cool case study here from one of our clients called Tala. So the first advert on the left is kind of like their traditional advertising, which they've ran since their existence. So you can see it's UGC influencer-led. What we've done is we've had that as their BAU content. So it's continued to run. It pretty consistently reaches a very similar audience. And we've kind of like, I guess in some respect, kind of like stagnated in terms of who we're targeting. So what we've begun to do is create new campaigns where we're introducing a new form of content. So you can see the ones on the right, they're quite aesthetic, they're quite premium, they're quite lifestyle. It's the same user experience, it's the same product we're pushing, but we're reaching a brand new audience. So we're increasing the number of new people we're hitting with ads, increasing the new number of customers who are buying. We're also driving a higher AOV. So we're actually reaching a more premium customer purely through the content. So this has been a great example around how we are able to kind of like maintain BAU, but introduce our brand to a brand new audience, essentially just through the creative. And I guess this is probably the most extreme example, but I guess most people in the room know that obviously Hugo and Voss diversified the two brands in 2021. So they've got one brand which is aimed at Gen Z, one brand which is aimed at millennials, and they've completely diversified the content which they serve to both audiences. Their CMO came out at the time and said essentially they're putting the brand to be entertainment first, engagement first, and they actually attribute their record sales they achieved last year, a lot of that back to kind of like the brand positioning of the two. And essentially it's just a great opportunity to kind of like really push content to a specific audience. And I didn't fully expect to use the next example, but Dove. So Dove are actually very regularly recognized as being a content leader. So they've got 27 million followers on Instagram. They've ran 600 ads this year in the United States. If you compare that to, say, The Ordinary, who in some respect would be a competitor, they've only ran 35. And if you look at the content which Dove is producing, it's so optimal. So they're essentially running like so many different forms of content just purely to engage new customers. So they do local and national petitions. They do mental health and like eating condition kind of like education. They do a lot of education around kind of like social anxiety and everything else. Then they bring in medical professionals. They've got UGC. They've got design animations like these. They've got before and after of product. So they're definitely a great example to look at in the ads library, just in terms of the like array of content which they're serving. And I just wanted to touch on, I guess, a couple of creative trends as well, which are quite interesting. So age diversity is a big one. So we're seeing like a number of the cool brands in the space, like massively changing the amount of people they're serving in the content. So it could be older audiences, much more diversity in the ads themselves. Modularity. So I think this was spoke about in one of the earlier panels, but essentially this is the theme of building different ads via one bit of content. So you might change the first 3 seconds to see if that engages more people. You might change the final frame of the video to see if that increases the click-through rate. And essentially what you can do is you can have 10 ads from one video, just by changing the opening sequence and change the sequence. And then some cool kind of like trends which are also going on in the space. So lots of different angles and lenses which are being used in creative. As saturated flash photography is pretty common. Different transitions, so like whip pan transitions are pretty common in the social space. So yeah, just definitely make sure you're very in line and aware of kind of like what the modern trends are, because they do constantly change every couple of months.
Great. So I guess my section of the talk was kind of different themes within roadmaps and kind of brands we're working on. And one thing I forgot to mention on the first party data point as well was the kind of actual data from our clients. So of those that have built out the membership style kind of proposition, like account proposition, that has generated on average around 50% more accounts being created. And it's resulted in around 60 to 70% more logged in users, which is obviously great from a tracking perspective, but I forgot to mention that at the time. So just a few other trends we're seeing. So from a technology stack perspective, so our history is more focused around replatforming and technology selection and that kind of stuff. So from a replatforming perspective, I don't think it will surprise anyone that we're like of the large replatforming projects, we're seeing Shopify winning about 90%. And then the final 10%, and this is all B2C kind of brand retailers. And then the other 10% would be more niche players, so Scale and Centro in Europe, and then maybe commerce tools or particularly commerce tools in the US actually. But I would say the composable builds are getting less and less common, and more people are kind of willing to compromise with Shopify due to the growth and the ecosystem and the 2,000 developers they've got on R&D and everything else. So another trend that we've got amongst our clients is consolidation of third parties. So search, recommendations and merchandising is a big one. So kind of merging into one vendor. So in the Shopify space, Advanced Commerce and Tagalist would be the top two that our clients use as a result of supporting multiple stores. So being able to apply global and local merchandising, and then also supporting things like markets at a deep level. There's a big movement away from kind of enterprise CRM solutions, and I feel like the types of brands here would probably be using Klaviyo and some of the kind of similar technologies, but a number of our clients have historically used kind of Salesforce Marketing Cloud, Bloomreach, Emarsys, etc. And we've seen a big shift away from those, although CDP is a growing category across our larger clients, I would say. And we have seen people like Dot Martens and Travis Perkins and some of the other larger retailers we work with investing heavily in that area. In the kind of low code, no code shift, maybe we've probably got 5 clients now using Airtable pretty extensively within their business. So I don't know if people have looked at Airtable much, but essentially it's a kind of no-code framework that's kind of like an interactive spreadsheet. You can do a lot with it, and it's, you know, very well connected to different third parties, and it's got very well-written APIs. And a number of our clients are using that as a PIM across multiple channels and across multiple Shopify stores, which has been really effective. And then also for PLM, which is not something we get massively involved in, but I would say it's a really good technology to have a play around with. There's lots of pre-built connectors into Shopify, with AirPower being the most common one. And then lastly, another big trend from a tech perspective, as GA4 has frustrated more people, particularly on the behavioral side, I would say, because I think there's been a number of kind of new solutions built from a marketing perspective, but very few from a kind of behavioral, kind of on-site measurement perspective. Content Square have really benefited from it, but I think that'll be something that we see a lot of kind of new entrants in soon. And I've certainly spoke to a few kind of smaller people looking at that. Another big trend is inventory optimization. So I won't talk about this too much. But our average client would have 3 to 5 inventory locations typically. So our average brand has a UK warehouse, a European warehouse, a US warehouse, typically all 3PLs, some of which are kind of partial 3PL. And they've got stock across those. Our average client would typically be fairly high AOV. And one of the biggest challenges, as I mentioned in the survey of 25 digital directors from different brands, was kind of balancing stock. So we've got a number of clients that have invested in OMS solutions. So One Stock being a big one that a number of our clients have recently bought, or they've built solutions around Shopify or within their ERP to essentially allow for split fulfillment. And I did want to have a screenshot of Shopify's new kind of checkout flows that they've built for ship from store or ship from multiple warehouses, or pre-order comms on the front end in here, but Shopify wouldn't let me put it in because it's not fully released yet. But essentially, a number of our clients are using multiple stock locations within Shopify and then fulfilling from multiple warehouses. And a number of clients have really benefited from that from a kind of conversion perspective, and they've been able to fulfill orders that they wouldn't be able to fulfill before. And this is much bigger in fashion when you've got low availability around kind of key sizes, but you've got the inventory in Europe or the US. So that's been a big trend, and something that I think we'll see a lot more of now that Shopify has native order routing and are building out more of the split shipment stuff. And on the same lines, pre-order is a massive trend as well. So yeah, we've got a number of clients that have recently signed up to Purple Dot, which is still fairly new. I would say it's not perfect, but it's a good solution for managing pre-orders or back orders if you struggle from a back office perspective. And they, I think, have just raised quite a lot of money. So I think that solution will get better and better. And then other clients have kind of built stuff out within their ERP or back office systems, or just built bespoke solutions on top of Shopify. And then that's it for that one, actually. Josh?
And so this is the final part of the presentation. Obviously, measurement's been a big focus for a number of talks today. It's definitely a big focus we're seeing kind of like as an agency and the brands we're working with. So one thing I wanted to touch on is kind of like in line, I guess, with some of the parts which Taylor was speaking through this morning, but we're definitely seeing a move towards there being more P&L level considerations within performance marketing reporting. So there's much more scrutiny behind media investment than there has been historically. So kind of like, I quite like Taylor's point this morning around inventory producing different layers of kind of like allowable CAC. So if you've got product which is in stock and not selling, you might have kind of like a higher CAC allowance for that product. That's definitely what we're looking at as an agency. So kind of like what we're baking in would be factoring in margin, factoring in returns, factoring in the likelihood of lifetime value. So the goal we're getting to would be for each individual SKU, we're building essentially a model to suggest, is this product more likely to be bought or repeat? Is it likely to be returned? What's the margin? And then essentially that would bake into what our allowable CAC is at a SKU level. So these are the considerations we're starting to kind of like be building into our planning. And then that data is then passed into a Google or a Meta where you give it your CPA or ROAS target. But definitely a big focus for, I'd imagine most of the brands in here would be kind of like understanding the data more and pushing that business data, that business context into the ad platforms. Just wanted to touch on, I guess, a bit of the evolution of metrics as well. So I'd imagine most people in the room know these, but over the last kind of like 2 years, we've moved away from clicks and impressions towards, I guess, more modern metrics. So these are specifically in social, but first time impression is a metric we use quite a lot as an agency. So essentially this links back to my point around creative being your targeting, but how many new people are we reaching within Meta? So within the ads platform, essentially there's like a saturation report you can see to see if you're reaching new people incrementally. So definitely run that within Meta. You don't want to just be hitting the same people over time. Thumb stop ratio, I imagine most marketers in the room will know this, but essentially this is the ability your ad has to stop someone from scrolling. So as a formula, it is someone watching 3 seconds divided by the number of impressions. But essentially it tells you how good is your ad at stopping the scroll. So this is where you want to be A/B testing that first frame. So social, you still pay per impression. You want to maximize that impression by making sure people stop to watch your ad. So definitely make sure you're baking in thumb stop ratio into your optimization. And then hold rate essentially is the ability your ad has to maintain that attention. So how long are people watching your ad for? So when you're A/B testing creative, make sure you're using these more modern metrics. And then finally, so yeah, kind of like media mix modeling. I wouldn't be able to talk on measurement without mentioning this. So most third-party tools out there now would have some layer of MTA plus MMM analysis. I agree with what someone mentioned on the panel earlier, where there's certainly no one-stop perfect solution for attribution. And there's kind of a general consensus in the industry that kind of like one of the most effective ways to understand media effectiveness is through controlled experiments. So what we're seeing is kind of like the return of control and exposed. So you could do this either geographically or at a user level, but just to quickly basically explain what that would be is 10 users see your advert, 10 users see a charity's advert. If 6 people buy who saw your ad and 4 people buy who saw the charity ad, those 2 additional purchases of a true incremental value of your media. So we're definitely starting to see the kind of like return of control and exposed experimentation and kind of like search lift monitoring as well. So, you know, if people watch your ad or click your ad, are they more likely to search for the brand after? So definitely a lot of development within the measurement space over the last couple of years. And I just wanted to give like one framework for how you could measure your brand activations. So if you are kind of like keen to start running some more longer form content and some essentially like brand-led storytelling, I just wanted to give some examples around how we measure that success. So we've got some ongoing primary KPIs. So the thumb stop ratio, I just mentioned how good is your ad at grabbing attention, the hold rate, how long are people watching your ads for. Obviously CAC and kind of like on-site metrics would be an ongoing piece. Someone again mentioned this on the panel earlier, but just benchmark KPIs. So within the platform itself, are you overpaying for traffic? Are you overpaying for visibility? It's good, but here's where it gets a bit more kind of like significant. So on a monthly level, we're tracking brand demand. So what's the relationship and correlation between our brand spend and brand search on Google? What uplift are we seeing in other channels? And then what's kind of like happening from a new customer growth perspective? And I guess the most advanced form would be this experimentation side. So this is where we're really starting to see the industry move towards. So this is where you would have like isolated geo ring-fenced experiments. This is where you would have search lift measurement. And essentially what you're doing with experimentation is you're calibrating and you're validating your own form of attribution. So I'd imagine in this room, everyone's kind of got their own form of attribution. You would use experimentation to really prove and validate the results that you're building. So yeah, definitely expect a lot more of this to come over the next couple of months.
Okay, so I'll talk really quickly because this giant counter has 20 seconds left on it. But essentially, so this slide and I think maybe one more slide was just designed to be a few last things that we've seen work really well for our client or just trends. So reporting investment. So as I mentioned, I think probably 70% of our clients now have moved away from using GA4 day to day, and they're still pulling a lot of data from GA, but they've bought in like a purpose-built BI like Polar or 42 or Dusty or whatever else. I will speak quickly for these last few. Notifications is a feature that we're testing a lot of across a lot of clients. So we're rolling this out across various brands we're working with, but essentially it's a little notification bar you would expect to see in an app on a website with a little kind of 1 or 2, and then that would be used differently for new and existing customers to either communicate change in catalog between visits or, you know, specific offers or the account piece, etc. We've seen a massive resurgence around native apps over the last 6 months. So we've got 4 clients that have either released or are releasing native apps across our pretty small client set. All of that is driven by first-party data again. So none of them are just kind of catalog ads, kind of with a kind of basic third-party connection in Shopify. They're all kind of concierge-led, loyalty-led, multi-channel-led, etc. I'll skip that one. Last mile was a big returning trend. And then I'll skip all the rest of them because I am out of time. So just a couple of examples of that. So one other thing I was going to say is granularity around sizing comms is something that we've seen work really well with clients who are looking to address returns rates. And then that's an example of the notification icon being used. And then this was an example of same-day delivery. A lot of our clients have moved to like city-level strategy, particularly for London, New York, and LA. So BuyRadar is a good example where they've started rolling out last mile in city for kind of mostly for a retention strategy, but generally. And then that's it.